Hey everybody, Jotun Warrior here. Today I'm looking at Children of the Sun, a little indie delight that released February 2024, published by Raw Fury and developed by a solo dev. We play as a traumatized psychic sniper, taking revenge against the cult that she escaped from. For runtime, it takes 2 to 4 hours depending on if you want to 100% the achievements. This is also one of those games where the achievements are pretty fun. They're tied to specific challenges within the levels that are hinted at with riddles. Children of the Sun is a puzzle game where every solution is a bullet. Tom Clancy would be proud. It's not a very typical sniper game. We have only a single shot per level, and we have infinite time to circle the play area and scout out our enemies. Once we take our first target, that's where the telekinesis comes in. When our bullet hits an enemy, an animal, or an explosive, it hangs in midair and allows us to redirect the shot elsewhere. There's a really solid sense of mechanical progression as we continue through the levels. We're introduced to a wanted style ability to curve the flight path of bullets. Does anyone actually remember wanted in the year 2024? Probably not. Anyways, the ability allows us to more precisely hit moving targets, maneuver through windows, and generally save bad shots. However, it has a limited cone of movement, so you won't be making right-angle shots or anything. Later, we also gain a power shot that requires a certain distance to become effective, but can pierce armored enemies that would otherwise require explosions to kill. The most interesting ability is the redirect. Most enemies will have a glowing purple weak spot, and once you hit 2 of these weak spots, you gain a use of redirect, which allows you to fully take another shot mid-flight at any angle. Our main wrinkles are the geometry of the levels, the aforementioned heavy enemies, and counter-kinetic enemies that can send your bullets out of trajectory. Combining all of these elements makes for some tense and surprisingly fluid solutions. There's obviously an intended path, but using the redirect and curve, you can pull off some really awesome trick shots. I like a puzzle game that allows flexibility in its solutions, and this game has that in spades. Some of the later levels are genuinely tricky, and I had to replay the final mission around a dozen times. Levels are fairly speedy, though. Most of them can be completed in a few minutes, and the game is only about as long as a modern movie. Which is something I like, but I know a lot of gamers prefer to sink their teeth into meatier media. I'm always honest about what I don't like, and in this case, it's the graphics and sound. Graphically, it's going for that early PS2 look, but with a color scheme that I just was not a fan of. It's both garish and washed out. Certainly one of the most purple games I've ever played. And while I appreciate the golden glow of enemies for ease of targeting, it seems like it's only necessary because of how muddied all of the levels are. As for the sound, it is a lot of droning and scratching. One minor point that I think is interesting, and I admit I may be assigning meaning to a design mistake, I don't think our character actually fires the bullet. When we redirect shots, we can clearly see the pinched shoulder of the cartridge, and all of the art for the protagonist shows her holding one single round. Plus, the enemies don't freak out when we fire our first round, although sometimes they don't freak out when a car spontaneously explodes, so that might not be a good benchmark. And including the brass casing on a fired bullet is such a classic prop and modeling mistake from people who are unfamiliar with firearms. I'll just say it seems possible that we're just telekinesising a 308 cartridge using the rifle as a wand or something. The story is told through a series of comic book vignettes, and it's going for the A24 version of a revenge tale. It's fine, but didn't really grab me or seem to take any big swings, just a solid framework to hang the gameplay on. On the pain scale, I'd give Children of the Sun a slightly painful. Overall, I had a good time with this one. I certainly don't regret picking it up, and I'd recommend it to anyone looking for a nice diversion from the mainstream gaming spigot. I don't necessarily think it's the best game ever or a must-play, but it's fun, it's brief, and the gameplay is really interesting. You can't ask for much more than that. Well, that's all for my 31st review. I think my next review is going to be for Kingdom Come Deliverance, the first one, before the sequel comes out in February. But when men plan, the workplace laughs, so who knows. Thanks for tuning in. See ya!